Welcome to today's session on the cultural effects on management of large-scale industries. In the complex world of mills, mines, and refineries, we often focus on the physical equipment. But today we're going to look at the invisible software, national and organizational culture, and how it directly dictates the safety, innovation, and profitability of these multi-billion dollar assets. Our central thesis today is that culture isn't just a soft HR topic. It is an industrial control system. In a capital-intensive environment, culture determines what happens when the standard operating procedure is silent or when an alarm is ambiguous. We'll be looking through 5 key lenses: power distance, individualism, uncertainty, time horizons, and ownership. Why does culture matter so much in industry? Large plants run 24/7 with complex shift handovers and high consequence hazards. When communication breaks down or hierarchy stops a safety concern from being voiced, the result isn't just a minor error. It's a potential disaster or a massive financial loss and downtime. To understand the causal mechanism, we follow this value chain. Culture shapes leadership behavior, which dictates the daily actions of the workforce. These behaviors then drive KPIs like safety and yield, which ultimately translate into the EBIT and cash flow on the balance sheet. Culture is not an accounting variable, but it is the driver behind the numbers. It's important to distinguish between 3 levels of culture operating at once. You have the national societal context, the corporate values designed at HQ, and the actual site or shift level norms. As managers, we aren't trying to change a country's culture. We are designing operating systems that work with local realities while protecting our non-negotiable standards. We've selected 6 cultural dimensions from the Hofstede and Globe frameworks that matter most in a plant setting. From power distance, which tells us if an operator will challenge a boss, to performance orientation, these dimensions provide a map for how different teams will respond to management directives. This comparative map shows common management archetypes. For instance, Nordic cultures often excel at safety due to low hierarchy, while Japanese cultures lean into continuous improvement through group orientation. These aren't labels for individuals, but population-level tendencies that help us predict operational strengths and potential blind spots. When it comes to decision-making, speed is not the same as quality. A consensus-driven culture like Japan's may take longer to reach a decision, but executes flawlessly. In contrast, the US model favors fast accountability. The trick is to separate reversible daily decisions from high-consequence, irreversible ones, requiring more deliberate challenge for the latter. In high-hazard industries, power distance is literally a safety variable. If an operator sees an anomaly but feels they cannot challenge their supervisor, a weak warning signal fails to travel upward. We must engineer permission to challenge directly into the system to ensure that status never outranks a safety signal. Psychological safety is a throughput tool. When an employee feels safe saying, "I made an error," or "this procedure is wrong," defects are contained before they reach the customer and plans are re-baselined based on reality. The goal of a healthy industrial culture is to make the truth move faster than the process. The economics of safety are clear. The steel industry has seen an 85% reduction in injury rates since 2006, leading to higher schedule stability and lower regulatory risk. Safety leading indicators are actually operating indicators. The same discipline required for a safe plant is what creates a stable, high-yield plant. Lean and Kaizen are most successful when culture makes problems visible. Inspired by the Toyota production system, we apply concepts like Jidoka, stopping the line for abnormalities, not just to assembly lines, but to maintenance, energy usage, and permit systems in heavy industry. Industry 4.0 often fails when the social system rejects the data. In high-trust cultures, operators annotate alarms and help improve models. In high-hierarchy cultures, you risk green dashboards where exceptions are suppressed to please the boss. Digital maturity is essentially technology multiplied by trust and learning speed. Workforce governance is another critical piece. Whether it's the Nordic model of codetermination or the contractor-heavy operations common in many regions, the management question is whether employee voice is viewed as a constraint to be managed or an information system to be exploited. Now, let's dive into our first specific sector: pulp, paper, and forest products, a world of Nordic consensus, massive assets, and long-term stewardship. In the pulp and paper industry, maintenance shutdowns are decisive profit events. Because asset lives are measured in decades, the cultural edge comes from patient improvement and high trust. Success depends on bridging global workforces across very different cultural contexts while maintaining commodity scale efficiency. Taking UPM as a case study, we see Nordic management in action. Their 9.5% EBIT margin is supported by a long-term capital view rather than quarterly heroics. In this model, sustainability isn't just PR, it's part of the strategic legitimacy required to manage forests over generations. If we compare Nordic and Brazilian pulp management, we see different strengths meeting the same economic test. While Nordics emphasize professional autonomy and structured learning, the Brazilian context often excels in large-scale logistics and entrepreneurial execution. The winning global model localizes the how, while keeping process discipline non-negotiable. Even a simple saw line behaves differently depending on culture. The economic issue is variability. If a worker can't stop a saw without permission, or if near misses aren't discussed across language groups, you get hidden variation that eats into safety, yield, and productivity. Moving to steel, an industry defined by engineering rigor, Kaizen, and the absolute necessity of stable throughput under high pressure. Steel offers a fascinating three-way comparison between Japan, Germany, and India. Each has a pathway to excellence. Japan through team-based standard work, Germany through engineering systems, and India through resourcefulness and scale. No single culture wins. The best operating systems simply amplify local strengths while neutralizing local risks like bureaucratic friction or slow bad news escalation. Tata Steel provide a masterclass in making safety culture operational across a diverse workforce. By providing safety policies in multiple vernacular languages and using AI-enabled observation platforms, they remove the distance between high-level policy and the operator on the floor. The industry has seen a dramatic 85% decline in injury rates, but the frontier has shifted. As routine injuries fall, the remaining risk is concentrated in non-routine maintenance. This requires a move from simple rule compliance to a focus on human factors and psychological safety. Next, we look at mining, where remote assets and high consequence risks make operating system discipline and community relationships paramount. The BHP operating system, or BOS, is a perfect example of culture converted into routines. By making performance visible and teaching problem solving at every level, BHP treats culture as the foundation for their record copper production and significant injury reductions. Rio Tinto's recent journey shows a values-driven cultural reset following a major trust shock. Their mantra of safe, respected, and accountable is part of the operational architecture needed to protect project pipelines. It's a reminder that even strong financial performance requires constant cultural vigilance. In mining, social license is an asset availability issue. A technically perfect mine can still lose value if its stakeholder culture is dismissive or opaque. Respect and community voice create the trust that leads to the permission to operate, which in turn protects the project's schedule and value. Let's turn to refining and process industries, where process safety and centralized expertise must manage highly diverse, multinational workforces. The refining sector highlights different leadership climates. While Norway uses worker participation to drive safety, Gulf megaprojects rely on central technical authority. In all cases, process safety requires a high reliability culture that can override national defaults to prevent catastrophe. Equinor demonstrates safety learning in a low hierarchy culture. They treat serious events as signals to renew focus rather than as proof of failure. By pairing employee participation with strict technical discipline, they've maintained a very low serious incident frequency. Aramco, on the other hand, excels at standardized operating discipline across a massive multinational system. Their scale depends on explicit language and disciplined execution, ensuring that their low-cost position is protected by operational reliability. Our final sector is food processing, where global standards meet local consumer tastes and the unique dynamics of cooperative ownership. Nestle manages the tension between global principles and local adaptation. Their strategy involves mandatory corporate principles that still respect local cultural and religious practices. The goal is consistency for brand trust, but with the local agility needed to understand the consumer. Dairy cooperatives like Fonterra and Amul show how ownership structure changes the cultural logic of profit. In these models, success is measured by the value returned to the farmer owners, aligning the livelihood of the producer directly with the utilization of the processing plant. Synthesizing across these industries, we see where culture hits the P&L, whether it's shutdown duration in paper or process safety in refining. The common denominator is the speed and quality with which truth becomes action. Watch out for these 6 cultural failure modes that destroy value. From production hero cultures that hide long-term degradation to compliance theater, where dashboards stay green despite a red reality. These patterns are the enemies of industrial excellence. In M&A, the hidden synergy gap is often operational culture. You can't integrate by slogan. You must map cultural risk from day zero and align on non-negotiable routines and decision rights within the first 180 days. To move from theory to action, we suggest a 90-day diagnostic. Start by observing sacred local practices and shift handovers, then design site-specific escalation channels, and finally prove the model with pilots that link behavior directly to operating indicators. This is our proposed management model. Globalize the what and why safety, ethics, and quality, but localize the how, the language, and leadership style. This creates a cultural operating system that drives both reliability and growth. To conclude, remember these 5 takeaways. Culture is an operating variable, not a stereotype. Translate it into routines, protect your non-negotiables while localizing delivery, and always connect behavior back to economics. Your job is to make truth travel fast and learning compound. As we transition to our discussion, we have several optional video interludes from Toyota that demonstrate these behaviors in practice, particularly regarding Jidoka and this stop-the-line mentality. We've curated a list of research and industry sources for those who want to dive deeper into the Hofstede or Globe studies, as well as the annual reports of the companies we discussed today. Finally, we'd like to acknowledge the image credits and licenses that allowed us to visualize these global operations. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.